Hi, I'm Jim. I'm an alcoholic. Good to be here with you guys. I teach middle school, so I talk for a living. But I'm not going to make you use semicolons or anything like that today. I got sober in February 2000, February 13th, which is 2 days from now, I think, right? So that'll be 26 years since God separated me from alcohol. And when I showed up here, I didn't come here to get 26 years of sobriety. I came here because my life was a dumpster fire. I was 33 years old. I was already divorced. Had already buried my father, who I knew was hopelessly ashamed of me. I had already had been engaged twice, married once. Those were gone. My career as a teacher was, well, let's just say I wasn't teaching much. I was showing up at a high school up in Poughkeepsie and should have been teaching and wasn't. And I got to a place in the previous summer, in the summer of '99, the girl that I was dating at the time, I was trying to convince her it'd be a really good idea if we moved in together. And she had a house. I was renting a house. She owned a house. She had a teenage son. I thought it would be fun to like play family. I might feel like a grown up if I could like step into that world a little bit. I had tried to work my way into it, being engaged twice and married once, and it hadn't really worked out. But I figured, well, maybe if I just step right into the middle of it, it's already happening, right? Maybe then it'll work. And she said something to me along the lines of, well, I'm just kind of worried about your drinking. And I remember thinking, like, why would you worry about my drinking? I do it really good. I don't have any problem with that at all. And she said, well, you don't think you drink too much? And I said, no, I actually think I drink just enough every night. And she said, well, I'm concerned, and if you wanted to live here with me and Shawnee, I'd have to know that you're not an alcoholic. And she actually said the A word to me. She said alcoholic, and I was like, oh my God. I said, seriously? I said, what, I gotta prove it to you? And she said, well, if you want to live here with us, yeah, I'd have to know for sure. And I said, what, I gotta not drink for a little while, and I gotta prove it, right? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, all right, how long are we talking? And I remember kind of bracing myself, because I knew she was going to say something really crazy, like a month. And when she said a year, I can't curse. I almost crapped my pants. And I remember when she said, well, would you go a year? I remember this cold kind of flash hit me. And the thought going through my head was, don't show fear. Don't show fear. And I was, sure, yeah, fine. Yeah, for you, for Shawnee, absolutely. A year, not a problem. And I went 6 weeks in the summer of '99 without a drink or a drug. And I don't know if any of you have any experience with just not drinking. I found out why I drank. Sobriety hurt. Just not drinking hurts me. It's an uncomfortable state for a guy like me to just not drink and not have anything else, because alcohol had been my solution to everything. Stress, worry, fear, excitement, depression, whatever. The bottle was there. The drink was there. That was everything. And 6 weeks in to not drinking at all, and I had people in my life who had, from time to time, had tried to talk to me about my drinking, and they were coming up to me and they were like, dude, what is going on with you? And I said, I'm not drinking. And they said, maybe you should, because you are a miserable SOB. And I was angry at everybody. I hated my friend Joanna, when she was doing her 4-step, she said that she was mad at the phone book. Everybody, alphabetically. And I was like, yeah, that's where I was at 6 weeks without a drink, without a drug. And a buddy of mine asked me if I wanted to go to this wedding. It was a mutual friend of ours. This guy, Ed, was getting married, and my friend Dave said, hey, I'm going to Ed's wedding, and are you going? I said, yeah, I was thinking about it. I got an invitation. He goes, yeah. He goes, but he says, let's just, are you bringing a date? And I said, no, I wasn't thinking about it. I was just thinking about going, just popping in for a little bit. And he said, oh, well, you're not drinking right now, right? And I was like, no, I'm not drinking. And he's like, oh, be my driver. All right, and our friend Ed, this was a guy we drank with, man. This was a guy like we would drink before we drank. That was like, me and Ed and Dave. That's what we did. Like if we were going to go out drinking, we'd get together to drink before we drank, and then we'd go drink, and then we get back and we would drink a little bit and talk about our drinking, and it was just. So I said fine, and when we got there, there was a not a reception. The reception's after the wedding. There was a cocktail hour before the wedding. And we got there for that, and Dave went up, and he said, "You want anything from the bar?" And I was like, "Yeah, give me a Coke." And so he came back with a Bud and a Coke, and I finished that in like 2 seconds. And then I said, I'm going to get another one. You want something?" And he's like, "Yeah, give me another Bud." And I went up, and the bartender even tried to help me. As he saw me coming, he said, "Bud and a Coke?" And I said, 2 Buds. I think it's just one. It's just one, right? And I remember somebody at the reception was talking about how there was an after party, a pig roast in somebody's backyard outside of New Paltz. And I had no idea where, but I was just like driving around these backcountry roads at 2 a.m. trying to smell like a pig roast. I figured, and I actually found it, but it was over. And it was because it was like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like knocking on the door. "Is there a pig roaster?" And the guy was like, "Yeah, there was about an hour and a half ago. Everyone's going to, like, you got to get out of here." And then I had gone those 6 weeks, and then I couldn't stop again. And I couldn't understand that because I had this thing in my head, like, I stopped for those 6 weeks. Why can't I stop now? All through September, all through October, lying to my girlfriend. You coming over for dinner tonight? "Oh, I can't. I got to do laundry." You want to go hang out tonight?" "I can't. My dog is sick." "Oh, how about tonight?" "Oh, I got to do laundry." "I thought you did laundry 2 nights ago." "Oh, the dog, when he got sick last night, he threw up on the clean laundry." Whatever. Like, I just, you make it up as you go along. You just kind of figure it out, right? And I didn't know what was going on. All I knew was that I couldn't get more than like a couple of days, and then I would drink again, and I'd try to stop again. And I know that next June 11th or whatever, she's going to be expecting me to have a year, and here it is October, and now it's November, and now it's December, and February 11th rolls around, and I had gone out to hang out with some friends after work and pick up some outside issues, and I was going to come home. And I got home, and nobody had been in my house for months. Anytime I hung out with my girlfriend, it was always at her place. It looked like someone had dumped dumpsters in my living room. Pizza boxes, takeout containers, beer cans, dog hair, dirty laundry. I'd just kick a path through it. I was living off the top of the laundry pile. And I got home, and my dogs were acting weird, and I saw this note on this little makeshift desk that I had where my computer was, and I was like, in all this squalor, for some reason I noticed that little piece of paper. And I was like, what the hell's that? And I went over and looked, and it said, "We need to talk, Darlene." I was like, ooh, she popped in. So I was like, what am I going to do? So I figured, well, I better just give her a call, But what am I going to say? Because she saw all this, right? What am I going to say? I was like, well, with all the pizza boxes and dog hair, maybe she didn't notice the beer cans. It's a long shot, but it's a shot, right? So I'm just gonna call and just go with it. So I call, and she picks up, and I'm like, "Hey, what's up? Got your note. What's going on?" And she's like, "What's going on? I was at your place." And I was like, "Yeah, I got your note. Yeah, what's up?" And she said, the beer cans and the bong you're drinking it." And I said, oh no, the place is a wreck. I'm so embarrassed. No, Carl came over the other day, and he dug the bong out from underneath the sink, and he brought a 6-pack, and I just haven't cleaned up. And she said, oh, so you're drinking and you're lying. We're done. And she hung up. Good for her. She was right. And that was Friday night, February 11th. February 12th, I got up and I was going to clean myself off and I was going to go over and apologize to her. And I was going to tell her the truth that I had started drinking a couple days ago and that I'd had 6 months or whatever, 7 months, and that I was going to get back on the horse and finish out the year and we're good, right? And we'll be okay, and we'll be okay. And I'm going over what I'm going to say, and I'm thinking about what I'm going to wear and all this stuff. And I'm sitting on my living room floor as I'm going over, and I look down, and I'm on my second beer. I don't know if anybody in this room has ever made up their mind they weren't going to drink on a particular day, and then you just find yourself drinking. There's a strange mental blank spot that the Big Book talks about. I have that. So some of the answers, when I first got to AA, some people talked to me about just think it through. Can't do that. That doesn't. Just remember your last drunk. I don't. I won't. I'll remember it right up until I forget, and then I'll drink again. I don't have the mental, and I'm a smart son of a gun. I got pieces of paper hanging up on the wall. I'm not a stupid man at all, and I've gathered data on whether or not I can drink safely. Lots of it. And I've drawn sane, sound, reasonable, logical conclusions. Me and alcohol, bad idea, stay the hell away from it, and then I drink again. This isn't about this. This thing is not an asset when it comes to my alcoholism. And I didn't know any of that. I didn't know any of that. All I knew was that I can't stop drinking. I keep doing this. I thought it was self-sabotage. I had a sponsor years later that said to me, yeah, that word self-sabotage. Sabotage is a deliberate act of destruction. He said, so let's see if you were really self-sabotaging. Have you ever gotten up in the morning and made the conscious decision, I'm going to destroy myself with alcohol today? I said, no, never. And he said, right. Alcoholism looks like self-sabotage from the outside, but that's not what it is. It's insanity. I didn't choose to drink. I lost the power of choice. I had to drink despite I set a timer for 8:25 so I'd know it's almost time to shut up. All right. There's no mental defense for that. I can't think my way through that kind of stuff. And once I got here, February 13th, because when I couldn't go to Darlene's because I was already drinking, and I called her, and I said to her, I'm in trouble. And she said, what are you talking? And I said, I can't stop drinking. And she said, call Steve. And I said, Steve who? She said, Liz's husband. I said, oh, I hate that guy. He was one of us. And I went, I called him up, and he was happy to hear from me. And that was a painful thing to hear somebody that happy to hear from me. That I wanted to go to that I finally wanted to go to an AA meeting. And he brought me to my first AA meeting, and I walked into the parking lot of a group called Sundowners in Wappinger Falls, and Sunday evening, and just like walking up here tonight, a bunch of people standing out in the parking lot, just dark shadows, right, with light behind them, can't see anybody's face, I don't know anybody, and they're all just like you people were tonight out there, talking and laughing. And I was convinced this shit only works for happy people. This is going to be a wasted hour, and then I'm going to go home. And I already had a plan. I had to cross the Mid-Hudson Bridge to get there. And on the way home, I was going to park my car in the Mid-Hudson Bridge, and I was going to step off the bridge into the Hudson River. Because it was February, and that cold water was just going to shut me off. And I had decided the day before. It's not like I was mad at myself. I wasn't like I want to kill myself. I'm like in some kind of self-hateful rage. I was tired of hurting the people that I loved. I was tired of living a failed life. I was tired of fighting the truth that the life that I thought I was going to have was ever going to happen. It wasn't. It wasn't going to happen. On Saturday morning, when I was sitting there with that second beer, the bottom that I hit was not, this is the worst it's ever been. The bottom that I hit that morning was, this is as good as it will ever get. Another broken relationship. another failed job, just another mess. And I realized that the most harmful thing I'd done to my mom, my sisters, people that loved me, was I kept getting up and brushing myself off and trying again and break their heart again. And I thought if I could just find a quick, easy way to end it and get the hell out of here, I'll be okay. I'll be out. It'll hurt them, but they'll get over it, and it'll be the last time I hurt them. I won't have to keep hurting them. And in the middle of this whole plan, and I had threatened suicide lots of times. I'd call people, I'm going to kill myself, and all kinds of stuff, and it was always just drama and manipulation. That's all it was. This time I knew I meant business because I wasn't calling anybody. I wasn't talking to anybody. I'm just trying to figure it out. It was just a problem to solve. How do I do this? And here was the big problem. How do I do it without leaving a mess? Because I don't want to be one more problem. I just want to go. And then the thought occurred to me from some religious ideas I was raised with, you kill yourself, you go to hell. Now that just seemed totally unfair, because that's why I wanted to kill myself. I was in hell. I'm trying to get out of that. And I thought, if I got a good story for St. Peter, I didn't know if I really believed in this whole St. Peter thing, but if there was a chance that there was somebody with a clipboard standing in front of a gate, the good little alcoholic that I am, maybe I could talk my way past him. A good story. I've talked my way into clubs. I've talked my way out of, traffic stops with the police. I've talked my way in and out of all kinds of stuff. Maybe I could talk my way out of this. Or talk my way in, right? And I suddenly hit on this great idea. They had told me, if you commit suicide, you go to hell. But they had also told me that God is loving and merciful and all-knowing. And I thought, I'm going to use that. I'm going to say to St. Peter, if he's really all-knowing, he saw what a dumpster fire my life was. He knows how much I was suffering. If he's really merciful and really loving, he understands, I just want to come home. I just want to be done. I don't want to hurt anybody anymore. Just let me come home. And if he won't let me in, then you guys got to change your brand, because you're not loving and merciful. It's a lie. I thought, that's pretty good. I'd buy that. Right? So that was the deal. But here was the thing. In this little weird fantasy in my head talking to St. Peter, as I'm like pitching that, the thought popped in, what if he says to me, did you try everything? And I thought, well, yeah, I tried everything. That's why I'm doing this. And the thought came in, you never tried AA. So that's why I finally called that guy Steve and went to that AA meeting, not to get sober, not to stand here 26 years later. I went to that AA meeting to plug a hole in my story, so that on the way home I could park my car on the bridge and just step off and just be done with it. Just be done. It was a failed experiment, the Jim story. And I went into that meeting. And you guys did something that we do in AA. You talked about your drinking. And we forget sometimes, I think, how powerful that is. People had been talking to me about my drinking for years, and I was sick of people talking to me about my drinking. I didn't want to hear another person say another word to me about my drinking. You guys didn't talk about my drinking. You just talked about yours. And I wasn't expecting that. I was ready to deflect and defend and deny and, all that stuff. And you guys are just talking about your drinking. No one's talking about mine. No one's asking me questions. No one's grilling me. So my defenses came down, and for the first time in my life, I'm open to an honest conversation about alcoholism. And you guys explained the symptoms of alcoholism in that first meeting, that when I take a drink of alcohol, I react physically different from non-alcoholics. I've got a wife at home who has a glass of wine, maybe a glass and a half once in a while. And every once in a while, when I'm taking the trash out and the recycling, I pick up, she drinks the cheap stuff in the box, and I'll pick up one of the boxes with the trash, and I'm like, honey, this is still half full. And she says, yeah, it went bad. It what? I've never had it around long enough to go bad. Actually, that's not true. I had a six-pack in the trunk of my car through a winter and then a summer, and I drank it anyways. Who cares, right? Like, what do you got? When I put alcohol in my body, when my wife puts alcohol in her body, it satisfies her thirst and gives her a sense of just, relaxation. When I put a drink in my body, I get really thirsty. Really thirsty. That's not normal. I didn't know that wasn't normal. I thought everybody else just had a little more willpower than I did. That's weird. And then that strange mental blank spot. And that was the hardest thing to see. And my sponsor said, it's going to be hard to see because it's a blank spot. How do you see a blank spot, right? But he had me walk back through just some experience that I had. And I'll share this with you because I've shared this before and people have identified with this. When my dad passed away, the night before the funeral, my mom came up to me. We're at the funeral home, and she said, listen, and I was still in my drinking days, and she says, listen, tomorrow morning, I need you sober. When we come here tomorrow and when we go to the cemetery, not the church, and she said, later in the afternoon, when we're back at the house, you're with your cousins, you want to drink, I don't care. But tomorrow morning, please. And I promised her. And I meant it. I meant that promise as much as I've ever meant any promise in my life. My mom is asking me to be sober for a couple hours so that she can hold on to my arm while we bury her husband, my father. And then the next day, I had to duck her because I wasn't. And I kept people in between me and her as much as I could that morning until finally we're at the cemetery, and I'd even gotten into a different car on the way there. And all of a sudden, I feel something. I look, and she's standing there holding onto my arm, and she looked up at me, and our eyes met for about a half a second, and she went, oh, and she knew, just like that. And if you don't understand alcoholism, like I didn't at the time, I had to explain myself to me. To me. And the only explanation I could come up with was something I read in a psychology textbook years before, that a sociopath is unable to have genuine emotional feelings and connections with other human beings. They can fake it, they can pretend that they have them, but they don't really have them. And I suddenly thought, that's me. Because why would I do that to my mom? I must not really love her. I must not really care about her. It's a horrible sentence to pronounce on yourself, right? But that's what I thought about myself for several years. And then I got here, and you guys explained alcoholism to me. That it doesn't matter who I've promised, it doesn't matter how much I don't want to drink. When the drink comes for me, it kicks the door in and it takes me. And I haven't had a drink for 26 years, so how do you explain that? Well, this is a pep rally for the power of God, right? Yeah, okay. That's the only reason why. Now, that didn't just happen, and it didn't just happen because I came to meetings. I had to do the stuff that's written up here, and it sucked. It sucked. I hated it. I did not. Anybody that says they're enjoying their spiritual awakening probably isn't having one. It's not fun. You ever seen a baby being born, being reborn, being awake? It's not fun. It's messy. There's a lot of yelling and screaming and crying going on, right? I didn't like it, but it was necessary. I wasn't going to make it. And in those early meetings, your laughter kept me coming back because you would talk about drinking in a way that you would describe point A, where I was, the hell I was living in, and then you would demonstrate on your faces and in the parking lot point B, where I wanted to get to. And you told me that if I did these, you told me you did these things, and that's what made the difference. And I had no idea, like higher power stuff. If there's anybody here that's wrestling with that, none whatsoever, no idea about that. The stuff of my childhood, I thought it was a joke. I was afraid of it, but I wasn't comfortable with it. And the stuff that I had to finally come to terms with was this idea of a God of your own understanding. And my sponsor said to me, he wanted me to think about my childhood and times in my childhood when life made sense to me. And to call him back and tell him some stories about that. Just that, times when life made sense to me. And I called him a few days later and I said, I'm trying to do this, but I'm screwing it up. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, I just keep thinking about other stuff. And he said, what other stuff? What are you thinking about? I said, well, I was thinking about my baseball coach and my football coach. He said, tell me about them. So I had a baseball coach that moved me from second base to third base. I had been a second baseman for years. He put me in third base this one season. And then in the championship game, he put me back at second base. And I said to him, I want to play third base. I've really started to like it. And he said, yeah, but we need you at second. And I said, yeah, but I really want to play third. It's a lot more exciting, more action there. And he said, this isn't about what you want. This is about what we need. We need you at second base. And I tried one more time to push back, and he said, Jimmy, you're either at second base or you're on the bench. What's it going to be? I said, fine. And I got out there. In the very first play of the game, a slow roller between the pitcher's mound and the first baseman. I got to wrap it up. I had to cover first base. I didn't even have to think about it. I was just there. And I made that play. And as we made that play, I look, and there's my coach smiling at me. He was absolutely right. I was in the right place. And I had a football coach that was brutal and yelling and screaming at us all the time. And when I said to him one day, you really enjoy torturing us like this, he said to me, no, Jimmy. But there's tougher days than this one ahead of you. And it's my job to get you ready. And I'm not going to let you down. And I told my sponsor those two stories, and he said, would you be willing to believe in a power that knows you, knows your talents, and will put you in the right position to contribute to things bigger than you? And I said, yeah, I kind of like that. And he said, would you be willing to believe in a power that is not going to give you an easy life, it's going to give you a human life? There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. But the hard times will prepare you for harder times ahead, and there'll be a reason and a purpose to it. And I said, yeah. And from that day to this one, that's my conception of God. Put me in, coach. I'm your boy. That makes sense to me. That works here. I don't care if it makes sense to anybody else. I'm not trying to save your life. I was trying to save mine. Really good to be here with you guys. Thank you so much.